Hey again, and welcome back to another Pathfinder video. Today I want to go through all the skills in Pathfinder and kind of rate them in a tier list. Um, so before I do this, a really quick thing is that these skills, I'm going to be speaking generally. There are some campaigns where certain skills are going to be better than others or worse in certain circumstances. And this also changes a lot with the group you're playing in, right? If you have 5 people that are playing athletics, suddenly athletics doesn't feel like as good of a skill anymore because everyone has it. Similarly, if you're playing something like Extinction Curse or Strength of Thousands that has special uses for performance would be rated higher in those campaigns than in regular ones. But I'm going to be speaking very generally. I'm going to include a few tips here about feats that I think make these skills better, without going too far into them, because if I go through every feat for a skill, that's going to be a really long video, and they could be separate. Which, if you want, say something in the comments. But regardless, we're just gonna start putting these down. When we get to the end, I might shuffle them around a little bit, but we're gonna just try to go through not too pretty fast. So we're gonna start off with acrobatics. I'm just going in alphabetical order here. I think acrobatics is pretty good. Pretty much, I think every character should be at least trained, if not expert, in acrobatics or athletics, just because getting grabbed is it's a pretty bad condition to begin with. Some enemies, especially things like Swallow Hole, if you're not trained in acrobatics or athletics, you're kind of screwed when it comes to it. So you really should be trained in one or the other. Getting ahead of myself a little bit, I'm putting acrobatics a little bit worse than I would athletics, just because I like the maneuvers for athletics. If you do take acrobatics, the 2 feats I really like are Catfall and Kip Up. Catfall just reduces your fall damage, which is pretty good. But by the time you get to Legendary and you can negate fall damage, it kind of you probably have flight. So suddenly fall damage isn't as big of a deal. Kip Up is amazing, because Kip Up just allows you to stand as a free action. I had a monk with Kip Up that I got so many uses out of it, because we just kept fighting enemies that tried to trip me. And I was like, okay, I stand up as a free action, doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. So Kip Up is really good. But I think acrobatics is slightly worse than athletics. Maybe better if you have a dex character who has no strength. Go acrobatics just so you can get out of grabs. Arcana. Arcana has a very special case, where there's the 4 spellcasting and recall knowledge traditions. Arcana is the best out of all of them. The only reason it's probably the best, though, it probably gets the most uses, but it also has Unified Theory, which is a legendary feat that allows you to pretty much replace Arcana for any of the other spell traditions. So if you go Arcana, get to Legendary, take Unified Theory, you don't really need the other skills that much, which makes Arcana just insane. Now, I don't think every party needs it. Actually, maybe every party does need one person with Arcana. Especially depending on what rules you're using, if you want to try to use Arcana to identify magic items. I stopped doing that a while ago because it just didn't feel very good. I just started saying if my party is taking downtime and they have enough time to look at the item, they could just figure out what it is. But if you're running rules as is, you probably do need one person in your party just to be able to identify magic items. But there is a crafting feat that lets you get around that. So, athletics. Athletics is crazy. Again, every character should have acrobatics or athletics. Just pick one. But athletics I like a lot more just because of the maneuvers that come with it. Being able to trip, shove, grapple. Mostly just trip and grapple are the 2 you really want. But those 2 are crazy good. You could just do those. And there's so many times in the campaign I'm running when the players just start tripping up all my enemies or just grab them, and I'm like, oh, the enemies can't do anything anymore. It's impossible to get out of grabs. You're guarantee. It's so good. If you are taking athletics, I do recommend you take Titan Wrestler just so that you can grab things that are multiple size categories bigger than you, because that's inevitable to happen. I even have one player in a different campaign. I'm not in this one, so I've only heard. But they ended up playing a pixie that went maxed athletics with Titan Wrestler, still allowed them to be grabbing stuff. So I don't know how optimized that character was, but they had a lot of fun with it, and that's important. Crafting. So crafting is one of those skills that really depends a lot on the campaign you're playing in. If you're playing in a campaign that allows you a lot of downtime, crafting can be very useful, especially if you're not in a big town where you can just buy everything. Being able to craft anything is super, super good. But if you're playing in a campaign like Strength of Thousands that doesn't allow a lot of like downtime very often, then crafters probably don't get as much use out of the crafting feats. Now, there are a few feats that makes crafting a lot better. Being able to identify magic items with crafting is super good, especially if you don't have somebody like a wizard with Arcana to identify stuff and you are using the identify rules. And then there's like inventors. I think there's a few others that can get this feat, but allow you to use crafting to like disarm traps. Thievery is one of those skills that doesn't actually get picked up a lot unless you have a rogue in the party. So being able to use your crafting to disarm traps is like really good. So I'm putting this in almost always great, only because some campaigns don't allow you the downtime to craft. Also, the crafting rules, like downtime crafting rules in general, are just bad. They really are just not very good, even after the update. But having somebody in your party that can like repair your gear is very good. If you have somebody in your party that uses a shield, you must have somebody with crafting that can repair those shields for you. Which is probably going to be the same character, but it doesn't have to be. So, yeah, crafting is almost always great, but sometimes it doesn't get used. Deception. So, deception, really good for rogues if you're trying to, like, feign your opponent. You can get some RP use out of deception. The problem I have is that there's certain, like, the subterfuge skills. So, like, deception, stealth, thievery. They kind of break the flow of other skills for successes and failures, where most things follow critical success is amazing. Success is you get what you want. Failure is nothing happens. And then critical failure is something bad happens. That's the formula for pretty much every skill. Deception is one of the 3 skills that doesn't always follow that formula. Where if you fail, you actually get what is usually a critical failure and something bad happens. Right? There is no neutral, like the enemy is unsure and nothing happens, which is what most skills would do. Because of this, I kind of have to rate those skills a little bit lower just because they don't follow the normal success-failure flow of every other skill in the game. I actually really dislike this. I'm going to talk about this a lot when we get to Thievery because it's super important, but yeah. So, Deception, if you're playing a rogue or someone that needs to feign a lot, it's pretty good. Otherwise, I don't know. Like, if you're doing social roles, diplomacy is just better. Which, I mean, we're at diplomacy now, right? Because the nice thing with diplomacy, there is no, like, oh, you failed a diplomacy check. It's just like, okay, well, nothing happens. You're not, like, penalized for it like you are with deception. Diplomacy, pretty much every campaign, you're going to have a chance to talk and make requests of people to gather information. All of this falls under diplomacy, which makes diplomacy a super good skill to use. Maybe you do, if you're doing a campaign where you are traveling a lot, there may not as many opportunities for diplomacy, but nearly all campaigns are going to have lots of opportunities to make diplomacy checks. And diplomacy is one of the skills also that if you make like really good rolls with it, or like optimal uses of it, you can just get out of combats entirely. Right, all these skills have chances to do that, but diplomacy is like the most obvious one. I think diplomacy should be in every party. I'm going to probably put it a little bit under athletics, just because you don't technically need diplomacy doesn't get as much use in combat besides bon mot, which is actually good and it's super fun. Like, I think my players just really enjoy using bon mot because it's just a fun little like skill feat. Yeah, so diplomacy gets a little bit higher if you take bon mot, but yeah. Intimidation. I love intimidation in combat. I do not like it out of combat. Just because out of combat, like the negative like repercussions for it, like even if you succeed, the person you intimidated, their like opinion of you goes down permanently after the success wears off, which makes it really bad. You really don't want to rely on intimidation unless this is somebody you do not care about or you're never going to see him again. But in combat, being able to demoralize people, giving them the frightened condition, is so good. Frightened is such a good debuff. The one downside really is that you typically cannot keep enemies demoralized. Like, you can't do it more than once, but there are certain feats that you get around that, or you could take, it's not the Grievous Wound. What is rune? There's a rune, an armor rune that makes it so your enemies can't get rid of their frightened condition. It's super good. Yeah, Intimidation is seriously amazing in combat. I do recommend every party have one person that can intimidate just for in combat. Maybe you could have the same person that takes intimidate doesn't have to worry about diplomacy because they can just intimidate their way through social situations. But if this is an important NPC, you don't want to use intimidate. You just do not want to do it. Bonus points if you get to legendary and take Scared to Death. Scared to Death is super good. It's super funny if it actually like gets the critical fail. Yeah, and it gives you another chance to like give the frightened condition, which is like super useful. So Intimidation's one of those feats like at legendary. Take that feat and it becomes even better. Or one of those skills, whatever. Lore. I like the idea of lore, but sometimes like lore checks just never get like they just don't fit into the campaign. They're too specific. A few things you can do to alleviate this. One of the things, I didn't put this in my Strength 1000 video, but a subsystem I implemented is because your players become teachers. I felt like each of them should have something they are specialized in. This is their research. This is what they teach. So I gave everybody additional lore for free. If I run another Pathfinder game after Strength of Thousands, I think I'm actually going to keep that rule and give every player additional lore for free. The reason I like additional lore is because it's a skill feat that doesn't just give you training with a lore, but levels it up automatically. So for one skill feat, you can actually get 4 trainings because it eventually gets up to legendary, which is super useful. But this kind of also allows players to use a lore, and if it doesn't get rolled a whole lot, or used a whole lot, they don't feel like they lost anything because it was just a bonus feat I gave them anyway. But sometimes lores get used really well. If you're like a thaumaturge, you're going to use esoteric lore at least once a fight. At least, probably multiple times. It's super good. But lores end up being super situational. I do like them a little bit better than deception. Yeah, lores are fun. They're interesting. I'm iffy on them. The other thing, too, is I don't like that lores always run off of intelligence. Sometimes I feel like the lore should be using a different ability score. If that were more like better codified in the rules, that would be really cool, but we're kind of running off of the rules they have. Let's see, medicine. I'm looking at the every party should have category, and it's starting to get a little bit heavy, but that's okay. We might go back and change. Medicine is super good. Really is one of those, every party should have medicine. Whether your party has somebody with medicine skill in them actually changes your campaign quite a bit. Because having somebody with medicine allows you to get healing outside of combat, which there are a few other ways to do that, but medicine is a very reliable one. It gives you free healing in combat if you take battle medicine, which why would you not take battle medicine if you're going medics? And then the medic archetype to go along with the medicine skill is seriously one of the best archetypes in the game. It arguably is the best, but that depends on your party composition. If your party has a lot of like support and healing, you don't need medicine as much, but I really do think every party should have somebody with medicine. Healing in combat, out of combat, being able to get rid of poisons, diseases, and whatnot. It's so good. I actually might say medicine is the best skill in the game. Just because not having it, changes so much. Let's see. Nature. I mean, I don't need to really describe nature. The thing is, nature is one of those where some campaigns, you get a ton of uses out of it. Like Strength of Thousands, because it's a school for, primal magics, you end up doing a lot of nature. You do a lot of like traveling, so you're identifying plants and animals a lot. Makes nature really good. But if you're in a campaign that's very like urban and you're in like one city and you're never traveling outside of the city, suddenly nature gets absolutely no use and it becomes a dead skill. Some of the things you can do with nature, the crafting rules, I don't really like that much. Being able to like train animals is not really that good. Honestly, you could build like a druid and not level up nature and be okay. I think nature is just not that good of a skill. But between all the spellcasting traditions, like Arcana, as I mentioned, is arguably the best. Nature is, okay, maybe situational, but I just don't really like it that much. Some campaigns get a lot of use, some don't. But even when you don't, like it's like if you're like my party where we made our own recall knowledge rules, nature suddenly becomes a lot better because we made recall knowledge activity way better. But if you're not using it, if you're just using it like in the book, nature's iffy. Occultism kind of falls into the same category. Certain campaigns, like if you're running the Slithering, occultism can get a lot of uses because you're going to be identifying a lot of creatures with it. But if you're not identifying a lot of creatures with it, what are you going to really do with your occultism skill? There's a few things in there. Like I think occultism has something that lets you make like replace medicine checks using like crystals, which is pretty flavorful and kind of neat. But I don't know. I don't think occultism is really like all that good. Between occultism and nature, and I was pretty harsh on nature, I think nature tends to get more uses. Occultism, out of all the like knowledge checks, is probably the one that gets used the least. Again, depending on your campaign. Okay, we're at performance. You might have noticed something on my tier list. Yeah, we're just gonna put this here. Performance is for bards only. I like. Okay, when I first started playing D&D, I wanted to play a bard. Because I played violin at IRL, so I thought it was really cool to be able to like make these legendary performances. There's so little you can do with the performance skill. I really do think it's bad. You can like earn income with it. You could try to like get some RP bonuses, which I like allowed some of my players to like use performances to give like bonuses towards diplomacy checks or like other skills. Like there's things you can do with it if you're like stretching rules, but on its own, performance isn't all that great unless it's what you're wanting your character to be known for, which means you're probably a bard, right? This goes back to what I said earlier, where some campaigns, Extinction Curse, Strength of Thousands, have very specific uses for performance that make it much higher rated, but generally, you're not going to use performance all that much. The one, especially if you're like a maestro bard, that's like the biggest thing where it's like you're going to use your performance to make your cantrips better. I'm trying to remember what they're called specifically. But yeah, I do not recommend performance on anyone unless you're a bard. Maybe take it if you want to like do some like really flavorful stuff. Take like legendary performance, which again makes you more like flavorful. And maybe you can like in the right campaign, your DM can give you really cool opportunities to use performance to like get yourselves into a situation. Or just say like you are legendary, you're renowned, people are coming from like far and wide, and to make descriptions of your performances to make them cooler. But that's not a lot of campaigns you're going to get opportunities for that. I performance is just not a great skill. I don't think they should get rid of performance, but I would just like to see more like cool things you can do with it, right? Especially like give things more cool things to do with it for non-bards, right? There's certain skill feats that you can use for like religion and occultism, being able to like announce your faith and try to like heal your allies or damage your opponents. Giving like little things like that would be cool, which kind of means taking the bard cantrips and putting them into the performance skill. I think that would make it better, but that's not the world we live in. Performance is just the worst. I'm sorry. I know people are going to be mad at me for that, but it is. Religion, which is the very last of the like spellcasting knowledge skills. Again, this depends on what campaign you're talking about. Um, it's not bad to have at least one person in your party that can identify religion, being able to like know like the various deities or being able to like perform rituals and stuff. Religion gets a lot of really cool rituals. Is neat, but I don't think it's all that useful. And again, it gets overshadowed by Arcana with Unified Theory. But if you're not playing in a legendary campaign, religion, I think, becomes really cool. I think there's a few things you can do with it. A few skill feats like that give you like extra actions you can do with the skill. I think that's really cool. But it's still not that good. It's like a high okay, probably. I don't want to say it's almost always great, but it's, it's okay. All right, and it's one of those, like, kind of like the bard. You expect a bard to do performance. You expect your cleric to be able to make religion checks. It's just kind of what you do. But, like, you could play a cleric that doesn't level up religion, and they can still do all their cleric stuff just fine. You know? Society. Society, with the linguist feat, allows you to get, like, more languages, which is cool. I wish there were better rules for learning languages in Pathfinder. I wish it were just a bit easier or more like downtime activities you could take to learn languages, but for now, all you have is that. There's also, was it Courtly Graces that allow you to like use your society for making an impression. Connections, and there's another one, making it for like criminal connections. I can't remember what it's called right now. Society has a few uses, but not a lot. I don't know, it's such a situational skill, but I think even in campaigns where you're taking place in a city all the time, I don't think you get to like, really use society all that much. I don't know. It just doesn't seem good enough to me. I have to rate it really low. I feel bad for this, but yeah. Society, I think, just needs a few more uses. Stealth. Stealth is so good to have. Whether you're talking about stealth for an individual or trying to stealth your entire party in somewhere. I really like stealth. But I like playing sneaky characters too, so I'm obviously very biased towards the skill. But having one person in your party that can scout ahead, that can sneak into buildings, or using it with Follow the Expert. Follow the Expert is such a good activity. If you don't know what Follow the Expert is, it pretty much allows players to use skills untrained, but they're following the expert and getting their bonus to the rolls. So you're not going to be as good at stealth as the rogue, but if you're not trained in stealth, you can just follow like the rogue's like footsteps and sneak that way. Your rolls aren't going to be as good, but yeah. I really like the skill feat Quiet Allies with this because it says when your entire party is sneaking, you only have to make one stealth check. Instead of like everybody making them and then like, oh, well, there's 4 or 5 chances to just nat one. You say, no, we're going to do Quiet Allies. So we only have to make one check. It's going to be like the lowest bonus, but making one check is significantly better than making 4 or 5. I think every party can get some use out of stealth. I think it's almost always great. Not necessary, but it's almost always great to have at least one person with it. Survival. I had my monk. I was like an athletics acrobatics monk, but I took survival as like my third skill. I want to like survival. I think in the right campaign, survival would be like a mandatory skill. I was playing in a campaign where we did like a Kingmaker, where we're doing a lot of traveling through like a swampland. We ended up having somebody with a lore skill to like navigate us, but otherwise we would have defaulted to survival. And that would have made survival a must-have skill. But again, if you're like nature, if you're taking place in a city most of the time and there's not a lot of traveling, survival just doesn't really get any uses. It's one of those, like, it's way too situational. Like, even more situational than, like, society. I don't want to put it with performance, but it's almost that low. It really is. And then finally, we've got Thievery. Thievery, again, falls into the same thing with your, like, stealth and your deception, where failure is bad, right? If you're trying to like pick someone's pocket, failure isn't you don't succeed. Failure is you're caught, which doesn't follow the same formula of success as with like the other skills. But yeah, so the thing is, having one person in your party that can disarm traps is nice. A lot of times, if you have somebody like identifying the trap, finding it is more important than being able to disable it. Because if you can at least find it, you can avoid it, right? Or you can just set it off and then walk through, right? So you kind of don't need Thievery, but it's okay. It's nice to have. If crafting didn't have a way to get like feats for disarming traps, I would say Thievery is that much higher. But yeah. I don't know. I want to like Thievery because, again, I like playing roguish characters, but it's like the failure being a critical failure, essentially, makes the skill just not that great. But, you know, it's good to have in a party, especially if you're playing a dungeon delving campaign where you're going to find a lot more traps. It's probably a lot more useful. But if you're playing like an urban campaign where like your most like Thievery checks would be like a pickpocketing thing, I just don't like it as much. All in all, it's, you know, it's okay. Maybe is it situational? I feel like I want to put it below lore. Yeah, I think I put them in there. Okay. Is there anything in here I want to change? Medicine, athletics, intimidation, diplomacy, arcana are maybe not arcana. I don't, because you could play a campaign without arcana and do okay. It is very good to have. So maybe it's almost always great, but it isn't like necessary. Whereas like medicine, having a party member with medicine changes so much. Giving you free non-consumable healing in and out of combat is so good. And risky surgery is just a fun feat, right? Athletics, being able to maneuver people is very useful. Especially if you've got like an enemy that's trying to dive like your wizard and you're having trouble keeping them away. Being able to like grapple them or trip them or both is super good. I really think even using athletics as your first action, which you would usually want to do for damage, can be worth it. If you spend your first two actions to trip and grab your opponent, my God, they have to, like, you want to stand up because you don't want that -2 and your flat-footed bonus, or off guard, I guess it's called now. Being grabbed keeps you immobilized, and makes it difficult to cast spell. Like, athletics is so good. Especially if you go into assurance. I had one boss fight where I took assurance athletics against a single boss monster. My assurance was able to actually trip them. I think I met the DC. But just being able to say, I tripped the boss every single turn is stupid. It just trivializes the encounter with one skill. Like, I really do think athletics is that good. Intimidation. I might put intimidation below diplomacy. Intimidation is super good. To have, like, the frightened condition is a -1 or a -2, depending on, you know, the success, to almost everything. That is so good. It is like being able to get a -2 is like, oh, well, you're, you know, flanked and you're frightened. Like, that is a -4. Oh my God, it's so nutty. Like, intimidation's so good, and intimidation has really good feats with it. Like, I didn't even mention like battle cry. Like, just being able to get a free check is, oh my God, intimidation is so good. Diplomacy, I might keep, no. The only reason I'm changing this is because I really dislike intimidation out of combat. But diplomacy is more of an out of combat skill. Bon mot it's fun. If you've never actually played with somebody in your campaign with bon mot, take bon mot and just try it out. Right? It's what is it, a -2 to perception and will saves if it succeeds? Which is, like, the perception check is, not that good, unless maybe you've got like a rogue that's hiding a lot. But just the -2 to will saves is super good for your wizards. Like, it's another, like, a -2 is so massive. It's really good. Almost always great. Arcana, crafting, stealth. I think I think this is pretty alright. I think Arcana is such a useful skill to have. Crafting also has a lot of usefulness, though depends on... It's one of those skills that really depends on your campaign. And having one person with stealth, it just opens up gameplay opportunities. The one thing I will say for stealth is talk to your party and make sure you're going to actually get to use it. I had one campaign where I was trying to play a stealthy character, but I had somebody in my party that's like, no, my character doesn't stealth. They don't. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't group stealth this in. You're not like, I couldn't single I don't know. I talk to your party, especially for all of these skills. But yeah. Religion, acrobatics, nature, they're all pretty okay. Religion is almost always great. Almost always great. But I don't think it should be on the same level as Arcana. Acrobatics maybe could be higher. Again, every character should have athletics or acrobatics trained. Pick one. If you're going to be doing maneuvers, pick athletics. If you don't want to do maneuvers and you just need to be able to escape grapples, take acrobatics because you're probably going to have a higher dex anyway. And Kip Up is, oh my god, Kip Up is such a good feat. I really do like it. Maybe that one campaign I played it, I was just like pure luck that I got to use it so much. But yeah, just really good. And then nature, kind of the same place as religion, where some campaigns you'll get a lot of use out of it, some campaigns it's useless. Situational lore. I love lore. I really do if you're a DM, consider giving your players additional lore for free. Because it's a really strong feat. And it just allows your characters to like be a little more interesting without having to like give up power. Right? You just say like your character's profession. It's really awkward when you're a legendary character and then your profession is still trained because you've got so many other skills you want to level up instead. Additional lore fixes that. And even when it's not given, I've been taking additional lore on almost every character just to be able to say my character is, this profession, this is their like research and specialize. Actually, I've talked myself out of this. I'm going to move lore up. Lore is okay depending on what the lore is. Actually, a good way around this, if you really want to be able to use your lore, talk to your DM. Ask them like what kind of campaign you're going to be doing, what kind of stuff you're going to be encountering. That's probably true for all of these, right? If you're not sure about taking religion, talk to your DM and they might be like, oh yeah, there's going to be almost no undead in this campaign. Like Strength of Thousands doesn't have a lot of undead, so religion probably doesn't get used as much. Nature, on the other hand, becomes super good. Situational, thievery, occultism, deception, society, survival. Yeah, I'd say those are all about right. I don't think any of them are, they're not bad, except maybe survival. But the right campaign, survival goes all the way to the top, and survival could be the most useful skill in a campaign. Could be. And then performance. Performance just, I like the flavor of it. If you want to play a character with a musical instrument and be really good at it, take performance. Because having fun is super, that's the point of playing these games, right? And that you need to have performance in order to be good with your instrument. Or your storytelling, or your dancing, whatever it is you're performing, right? I just think performance could have more uses that would make the skill better. That's it. Why? It's the 34-minute video again. Why did I need to be faster about these videos. That's rough. If you disagree, get in the comments and tell me. It's totally okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear what other people think. Especially, the every party should have. If you think something else should be up there, tell me. I want to know, what every party should have. Because this is the part that I think is the most important. Everything else is super situational, but yeah, if I got this top category wrong, let me know in the comments, because that's the one I'm really interested in. Otherwise, if you like the video, follow the channel, or subscribe. It's subscribe on YouTube. I've been doing too much Twitch stuff. That's it. I'm done. Thanks. Bye.